for watching. So I've been taking nootropics for a long time, 5-6 years, and through the course of taking various different kinds of nootropics, one of the things that I realized that I think is a good point to note about the various chemicals that are either neurotransmitter precursors or work on the different systems of the brain in some way is that they can be used as a way to essentially repair the brain or to fix the brain or to correct an imbalance. And then it might be beneficial for the user to stop taking. That if you think about things like, particularly the neurotransmitter precursors, like you've got the catecholamine precursors, L-Tyrosine, N-acetyl L-Tyrosine, the acetylate version of tyrosine, and then like on the cholinergic side, you've got alpha GPC, CDP choline, things like uridine monophosphate, centrophenoxine and DMAE to a different extent, an extent where you should probably be a little more granular and careful with your intake there. And things of that type, people get a benefit from taking those nootropics because they probably had an imbalance in the neurotransmitters that they end up making. And that's exactly the point, right? It's like the best thing to do, and what I've run into so many times at the course of sampling various nootropics to build the Cortex stacks, and then prior to that, like, you know, the years prior to me experimenting with nootropics, one of the best things to do is to identify what you theoretically think, because a lot of it's guesswork. It's like, you know, there's no real legit trustable way to measure your neurotransmitters. It's like you determine what you think you have the imbalance in. You know, if you've got some verbal fluency issues, then I mean, that could be any number of things. That could be a dopaminergic or a cholinergic problem. You know, it could be something you're taking, a medication you're taking. It could be blood sugar functionality. People like to rule that out or something, or take nootropics and say these are ineffective when they've got blood sugar issues or sleep issues at the root of their cognitive dysfunction. And you know, or whatever issue you're having, you know, and try to take the nootropics that would correct that system. You essentially have to have a hypothesis about what the problem is to then try, you know, granularly try different nootropics for a solution. And by granularly, I mean thinking like, okay, maybe this is a cholinergic problem, and then starting to take some alpha GPC or some CDP choline or something, or centrophenoxine, and you know, or eating more eggs or something. But in the case of nootropics, all those things, and then just trying to get the dose right, make sure you're not going over, make sure you're not going under, but mostly make sure you're not going over. And then once you've got the dose right for you, meaning you're not getting any fog from it, or it's not giving you a headache, or it's not making you excessively anxious or something, then continue taking it and see if it modifies the negative issue that you were having, and it fixes the issue that you were having, and then you could find out, hey, this was a cholinergic problem. I fixed the problem by raising my acetylcholine levels, and now I feel like I'm back to baseline, or I feel optimal again. In the case of something like dopamine or epinephrine or norepinephrine, collectively called the catecholamines, you know, you might not have that thirst for forward motion that you might have once had. So you might need a like sort of a reparative strategy for your dopaminergic system. Maybe you're not producing enough dopamine. Maybe you don't have enough of it floating around in your brain. You need to start taking something like L-Tyrosine or some of the others, N-acetyl L-Tyrosine. And to get those levels back, you know, you start taking it, you watch the dose, and then, you know, 4 or 5 days later, or maybe the same day. I mean, tyrosine is very powerful for turning motivation back on. In some people, when you've lost it, and maybe the same day, you feel that sense of vigor to accomplish things coming back. Boom, stop there, or just continue monitoring the dose and continue taking it and see if you can find a maintenance dose that keeps you just at that level. If you want to take a little further, fine, but just watch out to the point where you get to the point where you've got side effects, and that's just what I'm talking about. I'll give you some examples. Those two examples right there, you know, I've done that various times over the course of the last 5 years. And I actually think that when you take too many cholinergics, that you're depleting dopamine, epinephrine, or norepinephrine at some capacity. Because for me, I've taken too much cholinergics, run into things like anxiety, and ultimately cholinergics can give you brain fog if you take them in excess, and then fix that by stopping the cholinergics and then taking something like a dopaminergic, taking something like L-Tyrosine to get the catecholamines back to normal levels. And that's interesting because I can sort of balance between the two of them. You know, take a supplement like Cortex Generation 1, which I totally advocate cycling. It's not a nootropic you should take every day. Not many nootropics are Or just, say like I was taking a combination of like centrophenoxine and alpha GPC or something. I don't know. I never have taken them together, but let's just say I was doing that to increase my cholinergic kind of profile in my brain. Okay, so I'm taking that and I get to the point where I feel better and my focus is better, my working memory is better because I was like running into some problems, and I have a little bit of better verbal fluency. And then I keep taking them. I keep taking that combination, and then I eventually run into lack of motivation or brain fog or some other side effect. Because again, it turns out, like for me and for a lot of other people, there are side effects when taking the cholinergics way too far. And at that point, historically, what I've been able to do in the past is stop taking the cholinergics and shoot for something like that improves the dopamine, epinephrine, or norepinephrine, raises their levels, and then it's the combination of those levels being raised again back to sort of a normal baseline amount, and not blasting and flooding the system with acetylcholine and some of the other changes that might happen, like increased uridine from something like CDP choline. It's a prodrug of uridine. And then you end up in a better place as a result of it. But the overarching point is identify your problem, have a hypothesis for which neurotransmitter system is failing you if you're having some sort of deficit or you want to improve something. Start taking precursors for those neurotransmitters in various forms, find your right dose, and then from there see how that helps you, and make sure that you understand that the point at which you start to experience any type of side effects, the point at which you need to stop. And you've successfully depleted your levels of the neurotransmitters in question and have repaired the system in question, and now you don't have to take them anymore. You can stop or cycle off and then go and do your life, engage in some stuff, get stressed out because your life is stressful, and maybe have some sleep issues because sometimes you have sleep issues, and have some dietary issues because sometimes people have dietary issues, which will all bring on imbalances in neurotransmitters, and then go back to working on the cholinergic system because you need to now. Go back and working on the dopaminergic system because you need to now. Now, I want to make it clear, I don't think that this applies to all nootropics. I have been guilty in the past of being like, I want to take nootropics every day, but I've gotten to the point where I've realized it's best to cycle off of mostly everything, at least for me, because I don't want downregulation happening in certain receptor sites in my brain to where I'm not even at baseline when I stop taking a particular nootropic. I don't want my brain to get used to, in other words, operating in response to this chemical concoction, this chemical sort of environment that I've set up. So I cycle on and off nootropics, but ideally I would like to take nootropics every day because I like the enhancement of nootropics, right? I like keeping my brain young. I like staving off neurodegeneration. And like something like acetyl L-carnitine is just super anti-aging and super facilitative of energy production in the brain via fatty acids being able to quickly and more efficiently enter the mitochondria of brain cells. And that's just super fascinating to me. But when it comes down to it, sometimes you just can take too much of something too consistently and you run into a problem. That isn't to say though that this is the case for the racetams. It's like I've written an article about this before, about aniracetam long term, and I've only been experimenting with nootropics for 5-6 years, but I've done so much reading about it, and I have a good amount of experience taking them, specifically aniracetam, that I think that you could probably take aniracetam every day and be fine. Guys like Dave Asprey took modafinil every day for 8 years, and guy seems okay. I think you could be fine, but I would say that I'm not sure about those things. As sure as I am with the dopaminergics and the cholinergics and the glutaminergics, like if that's the way you say it, or precursors and nutrients that work on other neurotransmitter systems. It's like I know for those that you can create imbalances rather quickly if you don't cycle off of those precursors. But I can't say the same for piracetam, phenylpiracetam, aniracetam, coliracetam, oxiracetam, or some of these other nootropics, even modafinil. I really don't know. I think there are a lot of mechanisms that are poorly understood when it comes to modafinil. At least that's my assertion based on the research that I've done on modafinil. Never taken it before, but eventually I'll try it. And so, yeah, we really don't know. So I just want to make sure I'm making the point to you that this doesn't apply to all nootropics. that I am saying generally nootropics should be cycled on and off, and that you should take them until you find the balance or until you fix your problem, and then just try cycling off to see what happens. And really just approach it the way that goes, hey, let me find the imbalance, let me fix the imbalance, and then go from there. It's like, it doesn't mean you have to stop taking the nootropics right then, but I would say find the problem, try to fix the problem, and then reassess. And make sure, you know, basically what I'm trying to convey is the point of making sure that you don't continue taking something that you don't need. You know, when it comes to nootropic, you're really messing with very sensitive stuff. Neurotransmitters are very sensitive. Receptor sites are very sensitive. So you don't want to put yourself in an imbalance, because you're going to run into functional impairments when that happens. Okay, if this is before February 2016 or March 2016, sign up for getting notified of the Cortex launch. The Cortex product Generation 1 is not launched yet. It should launch somewhere around February 2016, at the very latest March 2016, we're getting like a couple thousand bottles in right away, so so people can buy them. So find somewhere on the website, either on the menu bar where it says Get Cortex, or on the homepage of LiveCortex.com, where you can put your email address in to get notified of when the product launches, so that you can buy a bottle when it comes out. If it's after January or February or March, whenever it launches 2016, then Cortex Generation 1 is already out. Get yourself a bottle because you're going to like it. I think it's one of the best cholinergics on the market. I mean, I've been taking nootropics for such a long time, and I've never found such a synergy in ingredients like what we're putting in Cortex Gen 1. It really just makes a lot of sense. Uridine monophosphate and CDP choline are essentially the building blocks for cell membranes in the brain. It's a very important combination. We threw artichoke extract and bacopa in there for the extra enhanced memory, and the PDE4 inhibition, which I seem to think is synergistic with enhancing the cholinergic system. So it's a really interesting stack. Pick up a bottle, you'll love it. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. Talk to you next time.